All right, we are going to get started. Everybody, welcome to our next edition of our Summer of Powerful Learning series. This is Developing Collaborative and Connected Instruction. We are so glad to have you here for another one of our sessions. I'm going to turn it over to the presenters and let them introduce themselves.
Hello, welcome in everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Laura Darnell. I'm the Associate Director of Professional Learning at Digital Promise on the Verizon Innovative Learning Project. And I am joined by my co-presenter today, Camden Hanslick-Burton.
Hi everyone, I'm Camden Hanslick-Burton, Senior Manager Professional Learning, also Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. Excited to be with you all as well and glad you could join us today during the summer for some powerful learning. And I'll hand it back to Todd.
All right, everybody, just before we get started, let's just go over our norms very quickly. First, please, if you haven't already, mute your microphone and then unmute if the presenters ask you to speak. But always use that chat feature to put comments or questions that you may have as the presentation goes on. Be mindful, so make sure that you're coming in with a very positive intent. We're all here for the same reason, and that is to learn and get better at our craft and our profession. Be present as fully as possible. We're well aware it's the summertime, okay? But again, we're here for just a small, short period of time together. So be present and be involved as much as you possibly can. And of course, be kind to yourself and others throughout this growth process. And I will turn it back over to Camden. Think.
Yep, got it. All right, so just like Todd said, we're going to get engaged since we have such a short amount of time, and we're going to start with our check-in. So we're going to start today with a favorite classroom acrostic. Example might be like KISS, keep it simple, stupid. That would be an example. Or one here on the screen is help, means, hey, everyone listen, please. So sharing a favorite classroom acrostic you like to use. And if you don't have one, you're going to get a little creative and try making one now. So in the chat, feel free to add in your favorite classroom acrostic, either that you already have or create one. I'll give everyone a little bit, a moment to create that.
For you will break my heart in two. Let's dance for fear your grace should fall. Let's dance for fear tonight is all. Let's sway. You could look into my eyes. Let's sway under the moonlight, the serious moonlight. If you say run, I run with you. If you say hide.
All right. If you haven't yet, go ahead and put yours in the chat or feel free to come off mute. Would love to hear some examples from folks here today. What's a classroom acrostic that you've used before, or maybe one you just came up with? Feel free to throw it out. You might be still a work in progress, but we'd love to hear what people are thinking. I see Tracy put in the chat, eyes on me is a great one, EOM. Very oftenly uttered in my classroom back in the day. All right, well, there is a reason we call this the summer of powerful learning. I realize some of us are a bit in summer mode. I don't want to belabor it, so we'll be thinking more about some of those acrostics, and we'll actually be able to share some of our own here in a minute. So if you don't have one to share out right now, feel free to throw it in later, but we'll keep it going to keep us on time here today. So our session objectives, two main objectives today. Our goal in designing this session is to keep it light, keep it simple, get you just the right bite-sized amount of information for you to implement in your classroom this fall. And so it's all around collaboration today. And when we talk to teachers, we know that there's sometimes hesitancy around what it looks like for students to be working collaboratively in spaces together. And just like everything in the classroom, surrounding collaboration with predictable routines allows students to learn and meet those expectations. So we're going to focus on these two things today around identifying components for developing the collaborative experience for students and developing your own collaborative bookend slide template. And we'll get into a bit of what that looks like here. Here's a quote about collaboration. I'm going to let this just linger here for a moment. And what you can do is in the chat, if there's any reactions you have to this quote, feel free to put it there. Or if you're finding any resonance here today, feel free to use the reactions bar on Zoom. So you can give it a heart if you're like reacting that way today, smiley face, whatever it might look like. You're feeling really moved, something's really moving you about this quote about collaboration today, feel free to come off mic too. So take a look, give us a reaction here in the chat using the reactions bar off mic.
Well, I would like to say my name is Tracy. I work in Tucson Unified School District. I think that innovation, especially in the classroom, this is what brings our students together and creates connections so that when students are working together, they have that opportunity to learn from each other and to share what they've learned. So I think that collaboration just makes for a richer and more connected classroom. So I think this quote really speaks to me about that.
Tracy in Tucson, thank you. Gold star for that. I really appreciate what you said of like, what other better reason to bring students together? And we'll talk more about that as time goes on. But collaboration, right? There has to be a huge reason to bring people together to get all of their minds on the same work together. And so that's what we'll be thinking about. Something innovative is a great way to do that. Any other reactions from folks? All right. I'm going to keep us moving then as well. My computer wants to yell at me. That's okay. So what does the research say around collaboration? Happy to share some of these as well. First, collaboration allows students to learn more deeply through hearing and sharing diverse perspectives. Facilitating group norms can reduce the threats of dominant culture. And deeper learning and positive attitudes towards content matter can result from collaboration. So all of this is there in the literature around what collaboration looks like. We put this here as just sort of giving more of the why. What do we know really comes from allowing students to collaborate together so they get to learn the content more deeply, but not only that, they have more positive feelings about the things that they are learning. And when they are working in groups, allowing for group norms, utilizing those can actually reduce the threats of a dominant culture in the classroom, which we know is a really important thing to consider when students are in groups. How are we looking for equity of participation? And so we'll share a little bit about that as we go on today too. And Todd shared some other research around collaboration in the chat. Thanks, Todd. All right. So today, what's the point? We seek to develop a strategy that can be used to promote powerful learning through collaboration. Collaboration is a big word, it's a big thing. And like I said earlier, we're going to take just a bite-sized piece of that today by sharing a couple strategies that you can use in the classroom. What will the teacher be doing during these strategies? First, setting clear expectations. We know that just letting students loose, saying, all right, go collaborate, probably won't get you the results you're always looking for. Maybe if you've established these routines as the year goes on, you can do something like that. But we know expectations are a big part of it. We also know what is the teacher doing during that. If students are collaborating, teachers can be looking for equitable behavior, monitoring those groups, making sure that the students are equitably working together. And then teachers are also allowing students to construct their own learning and their own knowledge. So a teacher isn't necessarily, always interfering or, stopping, pausing the collaboration. We know that collaboration is not always a clean, linear process, but we want that to be occurring as well. So they're going to allow students to construct that learning for themselves. And as I mentioned, students, they're going to be doing several things as well, right? Of course, they'll be learning, teaching peers potentially as well, and they'll be developing self-monitoring skills. I think we all know from our work in group work and collaborative settings, we learn a lot about ourselves when we're in those spaces. Students learn the same things. If they are authentic experiences, they're going to learn those same sets of self-monitoring skills. And then they're also going to build confidence in producing an academic artifact when teachers are, allowing them to construct their own learning. And so our strategies today are going to allow teachers to do all of these things as well as students too. All right, I think I've buried the lead enough. I think I've got folks excited about what are these strategies that we're going to offer today. So I'm going to turn it over to my fantastic colleague, Laura, who is going to start us off with our bookend strategies for collaboration.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction, Camden. So you're all familiar with the concept of a bookend, right? It's something you put on your shelf to keep your books standing up from falling over and getting into a mess. It provides a stabilizing frame. So today we're going to look at what I'm calling a bookend strategy that can be used to stabilize a collaborative learning experience. So it consists of two parts. Part one happens before the collaboration, and you'll see it has that literature effect of time, task, takeaway. That all starts with the same letter to help be memorable. And then there's the second part comes after the collaborative learning experience. So we're focused less on the collaborative experience itself, although we will provide resources for that at the end, and more on what you do before and after to stabilize that experience for your students. So we're going to see those in action today. We're actually just going to use the process so that you can construct your own thoughts about it and use it in your classrooms. All right, so let's start with our pre-collaborative work. This is called time, task, takeaway. And the idea is that before you send students to do a collaborative experience, as you're planning your lesson, you focus on these three things. It's very simple, and we're going to take a look at a couple of examples and then let you draw some conclusions about why you think this might be a powerful learning strategy for students. So let's take a look at example one. And I'm actually going to be quiet and just let you look at this slide, take it in. You don't necessarily have to read every word, but get to know the format of this, and then we'll look at another example. So I'll be quiet and let you soak it in for just a moment. Okay, Todd, go ahead and flip to example 2. Perfect. This is example 2 of the time, task, takeaway. And what I want to ask you as participants, as you look at this slide, I want you to start thinking about some noticings and wonderings. So what do you notice and what do you wonder about these two slides and how it might be used in a classroom? And to give you a little more context from example 1 and example 2, those are almost exact excerpts of what I might present to my students. This would be, as they're written now, appropriate for about an upper middle school, maybe a middle school level, lower high school. You could modify it for an elementary school group by using a little bit more appropriate vocabulary. Let's do some noticings and wonderings. And I would love anyone here, our teachers, school leaders, Digital Promise staff, anyone, what do you notice and what do you wonder about these two slides and how it might be used with students?
I'll give everyone example one more time for a moment so they can look back. And then give folks example 2 again.
All right, Tabitha in the chat is shared. It gives students responsibilities to ensure everyone is engaged and active in the learning. Yes, thank you, Tabitha, for that noticing. All right, we've prepared a few things to pull out for you. Wanted to give you an opportunity to share some thoughts, but we've got a few prepared. So Camden, if you want to go ahead to that next slide for us. Here's some considerations. These are some of the design aspects that we use with time task takeaway that make it effective. So first, when you're looking at time, it's important to set a timer and stick to it. You know, as a teacher, about how long an activity will take. So set a timer and stick to it. Let your students know that, you know, time is something that they should be considerate of. But of course, we've got to give grace where it's needed if they don't finish. And this is a great opportunity to help students learn project management and time management. If you see that students are struggling to stay on time, you can help teach strategies for timing as a like just-in-time learning that they might need. Okay, for task. For task, it's so important to be clear. Be very clear about what you want your students to do. We want our students to struggle with the content, not the process. So in your task section, you want to make sure that the process is clear, that you give small tasks with one task per line, and make sure that students can reference your time task takeaway the entire time. So it may be that you put it up on a whiteboard. It may be that you have it printed on written instructions that you might hand out to your students, or offered in your learning management system. If students go to Google Classroom, for example, or Canvas, make sure that it's written like that. And like I said, I always have it written explicitly, time, task, takeaway, in that order where students can see it, because that consistency is important. And then a consideration for the takeaway is that you want your takeaway to be something that could be used as a formative or summative assessment. It needs to be something that is visible, something that is written or created that you could offer feedback on, that students could present, some sort of product. And you could use it summatively or formatively, but students need to have something that they're coming out of the group work experience with. So those are some of the considerations for the time task takeaway. Camden, if you go back up a slide, I want to see if we can look at how those were incorporated into these examples. So for example 2, you see the time I gave was 11 minutes. I could have chosen 10, but 11 sticks out to kids. When you say 10, I don't know what it is about us, but if we have something on the 0 or the 5, we usually estimate and go ahead and rob or steal a couple extra minutes here or there. If you pick a number like 11 or 17, for whatever reason, it sticks. So consider that when you're giving your times. You'll notice that the tasks are easy and they're fairly linear. Students can know when they're finished with a step and that they can move on. And notice the takeaway here. It tells who's going to do it, the speaker. They're going to be prepared to talk through the solution of a problem to the class. So they know what they should have accomplished at the end of the group work experience. All right, so let's pause for a moment and see if anybody else has any noticings or wonderings about the time task takeaway structure before a learning experience happens and how you might use it with students. All right, well, let's skip on down then. We're going to practice this with you as if you are We are all learners at all points in our lives. So we're going to use this so you can see how it feels on the student side of it. So what we're going to do for the next few minutes in this activity, in this session today, we're going to do an application challenge. And what we're going to ask is that all of our participants here create a time task takeaway template. That is hard to get out if you're trying to not speak quickly. So we're going to give you 15 minutes for this activity. Your task to complete is to choose a design platform. You could select Google Slides or PowerPoint or Canva or any other choice that you might use for things like that. And we want for you to take 15 minutes to design a pre-collaboration slide. So that is, you're going to make it look cool. You can see the one on the screen looks very boring. However, it is definitely accessible. But you might like colors in your classroom. You might like to put a Bitmoji with yours. You might want to make time task takeaway stand out more. We're going to give you some time to create your template that you will use all year for every collaborative experience you do. I did that with my classroom. I had one slide and I recycled it in every presentation every time my students were going to collaborate. We're going to open up some breakout rooms. And I know the feeling is usually, oh no, breakout rooms, I better drop off before they open them. Hang tight for me for a second. I'm going to tell you what your options are, and hopefully you'll feel like there's going to be a great place for you. We're going to open some breakout rooms. We're going to have one breakout room for people who prefer to use Canva. We're going to have one room for those who like PowerPoint, one for Google Slides, and one room that we're just going to call Other. We're also going to have the main room available for people who may want to work independently. Our preference is that you select one of those rooms, one of those platform rooms to join, so that you can work with people in the same platform, get some feedback, collaborate, take a chance to meet some other people. Even if you are not currently in the classroom, this might be just a nice 15 minutes to stretch your creative brain and just create something. It's a pretty simple task to create. So you can choose the platform you're most comfortable with, or you can choose a platform that you'd like to learn more about and use your group to help you do that. At the end of the 15 minutes, we're going to do a show and tell. So the takeaway for you is to be prepared to share your work in progress. You may have something complete in 15 minutes if you're a quick creator, or you may just be sharing a work in progress, and that's okay as well. So you can prepare to screen share or drop a picture of your slide or share a link if you've enabled some permissions, anything like that. So before we open those rooms, let me see if we have clarification on the ask. All right, so Todd's going to open up breakout rooms. You'll be able to self-select into the room that you want. It won't be random. So to do that, I'll let Todd give you some instructions for joining the breakout rooms, but you'll have 15 minutes to work on your creation. And at the end of the time, we'll ask for a few volunteers to share what you've come up with. Again, you're creating a slide with time, task, takeaway. And go ahead and select an activity from your first week of school so that you can have this ready to go for collaboration experience 1 at your school. All right, it looks like we have all our friends back. Welcome back. Again, our goal today was to have a very bite-sized, I know that Canva party looked like it might have been fun. We're about to hear about it though. Our goal today is to have a bite-sized strategy that you can implement. So we've seen the first half, time, task, takeaway. It is now time to move on to the second half. And again, we're doing bookends. What do we put on the front and the back end of a collaborative experience to stabilize it and make it something that students enjoy and learn as much as they can from? So on the back half of a collaborative experience, we have 3 steps. We call it shout out, share out, shore up. And those are the 3 things that you should do every time there's a collaborative learning experience to make sure that students know what to expect and that they're getting the most out of their activity. So we're going to take a few minutes to walk through this post-collaboration experience. I want to say that if you ever dismiss students, say, okay, we're going to work 15 minutes and then the bell rings, you have missed such a great opportunity. It's so important to have some strategies that you use after your learning experience to really solidify it. So this first one is called Shout Out, and this is going to address a challenge of group work, which might be poor behavior or unequal participation. We don't want that. So if you end every collaborative experience with shout outs, you'll notice over time your group work behavior and outcomes skyrocket. So we're going to try it here. Here is my formula. This is Coach Starr's formula for shout outs. And again, the goal is to teach and promote positive group behavior. Here's the formula. You have to mention someone by name. You have to tell a specific thing that they did, and you have to tell why it was helpful for you. Okay, so that's the formula for a shout out. And what I would like for us to do is we had 3 groups. So we don't necessarily have to have one from each group, but I do want to hear 3 shout outs. So from your time working the last 15 minutes, let's get 3 shout outs on the mic. So please, you can raise your hand if you want to say something, or you can just hop on. We're a smaller group today. But if you'll mention someone by name, tell a specific thing they did, and tell why it was helpful for you.
I'll go ahead and get started. In our room, the Canva room, I appreciated working with Katie, and we were both using Canva and talking about how different ways of using Canva to create our template.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Let's have another.
Okay, I'll go. I want to shout out Tracy. She was in the Canva room, and she actually shared her screen, and she got started with her example, and she showed us how her template and her task and takeaway and her collaboration, how it was set up, and that's how everyone got started with their actual template with Canva. So it was pretty cool, and that's how everybody got started going working in Canva. So she shared her screen first and how hers was set up and everything, and that's how we all got going with it.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson, and it's great to see you today. Let's get one more.
Michelle, or if I'm saying that correctly, sorry.
Yep, you are. Well, I was all by myself in the PowerPoint room. No one else, I guess, likes to use PowerPoint, but I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Lucara or Lucara? And
yeah, you got it right.
Oh, which one? Lucara?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. She came to my rescue and participated with me, and she actually had me reformat it. It was a great idea. Instead of going with horizontal bullet points, going with vertical columns, and that allows us to actually, once it would be solidified what's in each column, it would allow us to show a transition between stages in progress.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to be very candid for a moment. I know that a lot of what I'm doing today is modeling how you could do this in your classroom, but I think it would be I would be remiss to not point out that this shout out strategy works. This has been a less sharing group typically so far today. You may have the same thing in your classrooms, but for whatever reason, once you allow students to brag on each other, they start to participate more. And what you'll notice over time is that what happens during the group work starts to improve because they know that at the end, there's going to be shout outs. And they get good ideas about how to participate in a group by hearing what their classmates appreciate about their colleagues and their peers and the other scholars in your room participating. So that's why this is such a positive strategy to use after a group work experience. And I do it every time. So make sure that you don't miss out on that. So that's shout out. And Camden, I'm going to toss it to you to talk about share out.
Thanks. And yeah, and just another about shout out. I totally want to back up. This was always one of my favorite parts as a teacher. Also, want to share that it's also one to use after the lesson doesn't go the way you thought it would go, because it kind of brings a bright spot back to kids. It brings a bright spot back to your heart. And I used to use it. In fact, kids love this so much. I used to have a rule where I said, if you get a shout out, you can't go right afterwards. You have to wait at least one before you go, because humans, and I say myself too, are really bad at taking compliments and like letting it soak in. They want to deflect and be like, I don't like being the center. I want to like say something nice about someone else. And I always love that. So yeah, love that. And we'll talk about shout out or share out here too. So the share out part is all about, okay, how do we hold students accountable to? And remember, we talked about this already. So the takeaway was the piece that we wanted to use as that formative or summative assessment to know, for students to know that they were expected to produce something of value, right? It's not something that's just like meaningless, and that it was going to come from that group work experience, and it keeps them on task when they know that they're going to have to share out that product afterwards. When they do that, they understand that if you're asking them to share it out, they will begin recognizing the importance of completing the takeaway. And then you'll also get really good at selecting takeaways that showcase student learning, the more that you do this as well. And one thing we want to add is to encourage students to share out and to make it really a showcase. Avoid really correcting a lot of work right now. We're going to get into in the next section when that time can come, but try to avoid it during the share out. And it also helps you stick on time if you're just having students share without necessarily adding on a lot of the own teacher talk. So let's try this. So we mentioned earlier in the takeaway, and just like when you try this with your first time with students, might not have like taken us fully seriously, which is okay. Would love if everybody could share either some unfinished, we know it's a very drafty draft right now, piece of your work that you were working on. So screenshot or a link to your work. Would love it if everybody right now could just put that in the chat. Take that leap. The Canva party, I know there's got to be something there you can share. Again, screenshot works if you don't want to do the shareable link right now or don't have time to figure that out. So let's go ahead and put all of that in the chat right now. We're all going to do it. We're not going to think about it. We're going to take the leap of faith. Everyone's going to act in good kindness that we know it's a draft. So screenshot or a link to your shareable work. Tracy, thanks for kicking us off. Tabitha, love it. Keep those links coming. Appreciate those who are probably updating sharing privileges right now. So it might be taking folks just a moment to do that. But being sort of honest to my word, thank you, Katie. This isn't a time I wouldn't necessarily pull those up and go, okay, so here's what I'm seeing right now, and here's what's missing. I'm going to try to like avoid sort of the saying what I'm going to see, and just encourage students to be sharing those out. And then I'm going to let people keep adding to that. And then I'm going to take us to shore up. Laura, did you have anything else to add about the share out section?
Camden, for the purpose of our recording, I think, are you okay with us just popping a couple of these up on the screen real quick?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for those who aren't here today, of course. Let's see if I can get that to work correctly on my screen share. So I've got Dr. Patterson's. Oh, right.
Love that.
Cool. Love that. Yeah. Love that. I think we've got like the school mascot. So here's I think Tabitha's here. Even got an example of what this could look like. Enjoy that too. Love that sort of the simplicity, the visuals of all of these. There's Tracy's. Oh yeah. Yeah, I love how different all of these even look, which is why what we really, I know Laura and I hoped to have done just in giving you all that space. And I can't get, Katie, I know shared one. I can't get it to open on mine, which is unfortunate, but I hope everyone has a chance to open. Katie is in the chat. I think it's just a matter of my screen sharing right now that I'm not getting. So if anyone else has their link to share. Oh, Katie, thank you. Looks like you updated the link. Oh, awesome.
Love it. Love it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank y'all. Y'all keep sharing. for sure keep sharing, but we do want to make sure we move on to our last little part here.
Thanks, Laura, for adding that for our folks who aren't joining us here today. All right, so we're going to finish up with Shore Up. And now I mentioned earlier, so the final Challenger group work is this wondering of equity of learning. So they had group work, there's a collaboration experience, but how do I know that one student didn't do all the learning? How can I be sure that maybe there wasn't one really confident student who kind of like was the enforcer and made sure the group got done, but I don't know if the entire group, got it, so to speak. So because students are sharing their learning in the share out, you now have an understanding of, I just looked at everyone's work. So even though I may not have commented yet on, accuracy or like the concepts or terminology, I now have a good sense of where everyone is. And Shore Up is now my chance as a teacher to fill in those remaining gaps, fill in knowledge, and potentially even add in academic vocabulary. So this happens in real time. This isn't next week on a piece of paper. This is, I'm as a teacher, I know what the takeaway, I know what the exemplar should be. I've now seen everyone share their work. And as they present, as a teacher, I'm usually like jotting down. I always had my iPad with me, made sure that I was making notes or maybe taking a screenshot of something I wanted to highlight, anything, misunderstandings that might be shown through work. And then I was explicitly teaching or reteaching concepts that didn't appear, or maybe they appeared incorrectly, or maybe they just weren't across all the student work. I might have seen them some places. And in times where, say, if my student was Laura and I saw it show up in her work, but not others, I might say, hey, Laura, can you show this part of your diagram from your group? I think that's a piece I want to make sure everyone else gets in there. Again, this is a place to just kind of drive home standards-based language, make sure that we all have a similar constructed knowledge. And it's also a place too for students to add to class notes. Is that something you use in your classroom? This is like that place that you can use plugging in where things will, if they need to add notes or tack on anything to their group work or like group artifacts, this is the time for them to do that. All right. So I think in seeing other people's work, and I can try this in real time, it feels like people have a pretty good idea of the time test takeaway. I didn't see anything too much. I think people make really strong templates. What I really enjoyed seeing in everyone's work was that it was visual and that was pretty simple. We didn't overwhelm students with text. You didn't leave yourself a place where you were going to get students too bogged down. Laura, did anything you caught in there that you wanted to highlight or any misunderstandings?
No, I think we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this home a little bit. We did make a Shore Up slide because we always want to have something prepared in case we need it for Shore Up. But this is one that we can skip because I feel like we're in pretty good shape here. But if you're a screenshot kind of person, if you want to go back up to that for just a second, Camden, if you're a screenshot kind of person and want to get all of today's lesson on one time, go ahead and you can take a screenshot of that. It describes all of our strategies. And then if you would in the chat, give us a quick 1, 2, or 3. How do you feel about your understanding today? Number 1, you're unclear. Number 2, you understand the purpose of this structure. Or number 3, you could share this structure with someone else. If you'll go ahead and throw that in the chat. And while we see those coming in, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Todd, Camden, if you'll go on 2 slides. Go ahead next. For next school year, we're going to provide a resource from Digital Promise for you into the chat. It's called the Collaborative and Connected Design Guide. So Todd will be dropping that resource for you into the chat. You can use that to help you structure that middle part of your collaborative experience. We gave you the bookends for each side. You can use that design guide to help you think through the collaborative experiences that will be good for your students. We want to thank you for coming today. Todd's got a few last minute reminders and wrap ups, and then we will look forward to you having a great rest of your summer.
Thanks, Laura. All right, so we only have 3 more sessions remaining in our Summer of Powerful Learning series. And again, like always, it is next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And of course, if you signed up for this one, it's in the same place to sign up for the next one as well. So make sure that you get that onto your calendar. We have coaching toward collaborative and connected instruction, and that is going to be a fantastic session as well. Something else to check out is the VILS HQ portal, okay, that has AR and VR apps, professional learning resources, lesson plans, and just a variety of resources there for you. And that is at verizon.com/learning. I'm going to put the link to the survey into the chat just before we end here, so that you can have that. Please fill that out, as that does allow us to log your attendance for the session, as well as allow you to provide feedback on today's session as well. And if you requested, you will get a certificate of completion in your email as well. Just to echo what Laura said to wrap up, thank you very much for giving us your time and spending it with us today. And we look forward to seeing you in the next session.